All right. And now I want to address a common question that I get, which is what is the difference between a regular old new moon and an eclipse, a new moon eclipse, right? It's an amazing question. So I want to tell you, first of all, with this, it's much more easy to understand if you understand up in the sky what is happening, okay? So first, we need to address the fact that the Earth revolves around the sun. And then the moon revolves around the earth, right? So we've got big object in the middle of the sun, Earth's going around it, and then we have a relative to all of that, a tiny object, the moon going around the earth. Now, the path that the earth takes is called the ecliptic, okay? And as the moon goes around the earth, it has a path that it follows as well. However, it's at a different angle. And so I want to kind of visualize this. I want to walk you through sort of a scenario. So imagine that there is a ball hanging from the ceiling and it is hanging 5 feet below the ceiling. Okay. It's just sitting there on a string. It's not moving at all. That's the sun. Okay. The earth orbits around the sun at a steady 5 feet all the way around, never changes, stays at 5 feet constantly, constantly, constantly. Okay, then as we, the earth, are moving around the sun, again, the moon is orbiting around us. Now, however, it is not orbiting at 5 feet below the ceiling. Its orbit is tilted. It kind of goes at an angle. So as it goes around us, sometimes it's all the way down to 6 feet below the ceiling, and sometimes it goes up to 4 feet. Okay. So it oscillates between that 6 feet below the ceiling and 4 feet below the ceiling. Meanwhile, again, the earth and the sun are always five. Okay. So now that we've acknowledged that, here's the other thing. As the moon is orbiting around us, sometimes the moon gets between us and the sun, and sometimes we, the earth, are between the sun and the moon. Now, when the moon is between the sun and the earth directly, that is a new moon. Now, the moment where the moon is directly between the sun and the earth, like literally you could draw a straight line, and the moon is also at 5 feet, that's an eclipse point. But most new moons, the moon is at the 6 feet or the four, or it's at, say, 5 feet, 8 inches, or 4 feet, 6 inches, right? But when they directly all line up and the moon is right in the middle of the sun and the earth, that's when we get the eclipse. Now, when they line up, but the moon is at, say, that 4 foot or the 6 foot, we just get a regular new moon. Okay. And really, what if you could stand on Earth and see the sun and the moon at the same time, you can't see the moon at a new moon because the sun is shining its light towards the moon and towards us, but because the moon is directly in between us and the sun, the sun's light is shining on the side of the moon that we can't see, that we see just the dark side of the moon. But if you could look up, and there's apps where you can do this, if you could look up in the sky at a new moon, all you need to do is look towards the sun and point that app up there and then start looking around and trying to find the moon. And what it is that the moon will be higher or lower than the sun. Okay. But at the solar eclipse, again, the moon crosses over directly in front of the sun. And that's where we get that phenomenon where we see this ring of fire. The moon completely eclipses the light of the sun. And that's where you see people wearing those fancy blockout glasses so they can actually look at the sun and see how the moon's passing over it, right? Okay, so now, and it's worth mentioning that there are also partial solar eclipses too. And that would be when the moon isn't exactly at the 5 foot mark. Remember, I'm using that analogy, like we're all 5 feet below, but maybe the moon is at, say, 5 feet, 2 inches. It's not quite exact. Or maybe it's at 4 feet, 8 inches, but it's gonna block out part of the sun, but maybe not quite all of it. Okay. All right, so I hope that helps you visualize what's happening and what's the difference between just a regular new moon and a eclipse. So now, what does it mean? Okay, what does the energy mean? All right, well, let's start with the plain old new moons and not eclipses. So astrologers have been studying the energetics behind them for centuries, and they've really noticed that it's a time to reset. It's kind of like the moon is going dark. It's wiping the slate clean. And we're being called to do the same. So it is a time to go within, to get quiet and get so quiet that you can listen to your own thoughts and you can hear your own inner knowing and really connect to your feelings and lean into what is true for you, right? And then that's where we get into dream and set new intentions, okay? Now, as we talk about the solar eclipse, so the new moon solar eclipse, this is again what we were just talking about, where the moon eclipses the solar light of the sun. Okay, well, according to astrologer, I have a quote here. According to astrologer Kyle Thomas, back in the ancient times, the solar eclipse was thought of as the eye of an angry god. Okay, but as we have evolved, we've come to see that the new moon eclipse is, again, in its simplest terms, just a really powerful new moon. It's a new moon on steroids. But if we delve into it a little bit more, it is a time when we can experience rapid change, rapid growth, a sudden breakthrough. What an eclipse will do is the energy of it can often make you feel like you're in crisis mode. And if you work with the energy positively, you're going to see, you're going to have this, like a sudden breakthrough again. And here's the thing, eclipses come in pairs. So even though we're talking about the solar eclipse here, either 2 weeks before or 2 weeks after, we're going to have a lunar eclipse, which is more of an energy around endings and sudden realizations and making big decisions. The new moon solar eclipse is more of a big sudden breakthrough that propels you forward in the direction that you need to go. Okay. But because they come in pairs, and again, the lunar eclipse is the one that, again, it's forcing that sort of ending that creates the space or creates the opportunity for that new beginning. They do happen in direct opposite signs in the sky, right? So they're not related in that sense, but if you think about the houses and how the houses really do work in pairs. For example, your first house, the house that's opposite it is your seventh house. And the first house is the self, the seventh house is relationships. So you could have something, say, happen on the full moon related to your relationship that creates a new opportunity for you as an individual. Another example, second house and eighth house. Second house is your resources, your and what you value, your money, your time, and your resources and your skills, your things. The eighth house is others resources. And so again, you could have something happen with, say, second house that could require a shift in the eighth house or vice versa. All right. Another pair, fourth house and 10th house. The fourth house is home and the 10th house is career. So those dynamics working together. All right. So those pairs are active at the eclipses, because they almost always occur in opposite signs. Sometimes they don't. This particular one we're having here on March 27th, 2025, the lunar eclipse that we just had was in Virgo, and the pair would be Pisces, but it's actually still happening in Aries. So they're a little off there. But again, there are always patterns and things that we can look to. All right, and here's the other thing about eclipses, though. Again, it comes with these sudden breakthroughs. If you're on the right path, you're going to be shown that. You're going to experience something that tells you that, perhaps a major win, a sudden breakthrough, just rewarded with it, right? Something that you would consider a win. And if you're not on the right path, things are going to get harder, or you're going to perhaps experience some sort of a loss or a challenge. All right. Now, and again, this will always be falling in a specific area of life based on your unique chart. And so if you'd like to know which area of life, so you can work with these eclipse energies a little more intelligently, have some clues, rather than kind of thinking about your whole life in general, that's where Moon Chat comes in. So I'll link to the show notes there, but that's my subscription service where every single moon phase you get an email sent to you that is customized based on your astrology chart. So I tell you not just what phase we're in and how to work with the energy, but what area of life it's activating for you. All right. Finally, the last thing I want to mention about eclipses is that it's considered to be a season every time we have an eclipse. So again, I mentioned that they come in pairs about 2 weeks apart. So 1 month before the first eclipse, on into 1 month after the second eclipse, that is all considered eclipse season. So let's say we have a full moon eclipse and 2 weeks later we get the solar. So a month before that full moon eclipse and then 1 month after the solar eclipse is the season where this energy is the most powerful. So you can be working with all of it. And again, we're talking about a solar eclipse here, but the lunar eclipse is going to be active at the same time. And so you have about 2 months and 2 weeks, give or take, to work with these eclipse energies. And they happen a couple of times a year, about 6 months apart. All right, I hope that was helpful. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed this, please leave a review or drop a thumbs up depending on where you're listening. And if this was helpful for you and you think somebody else would benefit from it, please click the share button.